Welcome to Harcourt Arboretum's meadows. Here we have around 70 acres of wildflower meadow. Some of it is 30 years old. The field we're currently standing in at the moment was planted about 12 years ago. This used to just be a bit of arable wasteland, and we've spent the last 10 years trying to convert it and turn it into this wonderful wildflower meadow. There's quite a process behind that. One of the biggest problems is getting rid of the weeds. One of the main issues really is the tall grass. The tall grass becomes a bit of a host for the weeds, as well as outcompeting the wildflowers that you want to establish. Wildflowers also like really low nutrient soils, so if you end up with too much green material on top of the meadow, you end up having too high nutrient levels, and the wildflowers just don't like it. So there's a very key wildflower that a lot of people know about nowadays called yellow rattle. Now, yellow rattle is parasitic to grasses and is a fantastic way to get the grass levels down, and it opens up far more space for the wildflowers. Now, the only problem with yellow rattle is trying to get it to establish in the first place is quite difficult. That can only really be done on this form of scale with the use of wildlife. So every year we get our meadows grazed, whether that's with cattle or sheep, and their hooves push the yellow rattle seed into the soil, and also through their movement across the field they spread the yellow rattle around. When I first started, there's a very small patch of yellow rattle down the bottom of this field. It's now spread across both meadows, and as a result we've managed to establish this fantastic wildflower meadow. A lot of people also get concerned about weed levels. We did have problems to begin with. Ragwort is one of the worst ones, as well as dock and thistle. But we found with the nutrient levels now dropping that these more invasive weeds tend not to like the growing conditions, and we're now to the point where we get very little, and we very rarely have to weed those. The other key part about the meadow is getting it cut. Every year we get the meadow cut. Yet again, this helps drop the nutrient levels. It also reduces the amount of weeds that can spread, and this goes to animal feed. And every year the grass levels reduce, every year the wildflowers increase. So if you're a farmer, it's not so good because your feed's not as good and you don't get as much crop. But for us it's fantastic because it really does show that the wildflower meadow is starting to really establish. This wildflower meadow was planted using seed from our older wildflower meadow over the hill. We did a thing called brush harvesting, which takes all the seed from the top layer of the wildflower meadow. We then dried it out and then we sowed it over this field over 3 years. As well as that, we bought wildflower mix in. We topped up the existing wildflowers, the wildflower mix. And as a result, this meadow has actually got a far more established and diverse wildflower mix than our older one over the hill. We're now at a point now that this meadow is helping the older meadow, and in all, we're now at a point where we've got a pretty good variety of wildflowers. And by doing the cut, different times a year, we also get different wildflower meadows coming out. We're doing a slightly earlier cut this year, so we'll get a second wave of things like knapweed that can handle being cut before they regrow. This is obviously on a large scale. As I said, we're about 70 acres here. We can use big tractors, we can get cattle, we can get sheep in. But on a smaller scale, wildflower meadows can still be planted. You don't have to use cattle, you don't have to use tractors. You can do a little 1 metre patch in your garden if you like. Yellow rattle is still key, I would say. All you need is your own wildflower mix. But instead of getting sheep in, you can just walk over the grass in football boots, and that does the exact same job that the sheep's hooves do by pushing the seed into the ground. Instead of baling it, you can just cut it with a lawnmower and rake the rest of the cuttings off, and you can hand weed. So yes, this is large scale for us. You know, we can throw big machinery at the situation, but there is nothing stopping you doing this at home on a smaller scale, and and it's just trying to find those various different techniques. I think that's it, and yeah, meadow's looking great.